Yo guys, so I'm back. This time I'm gonna show you guys how to mix and master the best way I know how. Stock and paid versions of doing that. Let's get into it. Alright, so we left off, finished the loop, EQ'd the melody. Now I just brought down the faders and volumes of every track in the beat. We're just gonna start by mixing the sounds together and then we'll get into the mastering. So I like to have my melodies hit around -12, give or take. That's about right. Let's do the same for the second melody. Okay, now let's start bringing in the drums in context of the other sounds. Last but not least, I'm just going to pull in the 808 up to 0 dB. Let's bring in all these sound effects. I like to have these impacts on the 1 hitting between -21 and -18. Like you have with the snare and open hat, I like to pan certain elements of the track left and right so that the stereo field is wider. The same way you want to fill out the whole frequency spectrum. And then this rerun. So that's pretty much how I'd mix the elements of the beat, and here's how it sounds before any mastering. Cool. So first off, I'm going to show you guys how to master your beats with all stock plugins. First, pull up from the EQ section the linear EQ, because the linear will avoid phase issues. On the master, you have to remember that any adjustments you make have to be super subtle, otherwise it will throw off the sound of the whole beat. I like to usually start by boosting a little lows and highs, see what needs to be done. Hearing a little high mid that might need to be ducked a little bit. So here is before the EQ and after. Now let's jump into the next step. Next in the stock mastering chain is going to be your multipressor, which comes from Dynamics Multipressor. This is kind of my go-to setup. Feel free to screenshot this if you want to copy these settings. Go through and adjust each band of frequencies, and then at the end I will adjust this out knob to get it nice and loud. Going to go through and solo each band of frequencies here. Hit solo. Now let's go to number 2, where you often find some of that muddiness. And then the third one, where the meat of your beat is going to sit, push, or pull this back down depending on the beat. So. Now this fourth one is super high end. You don't want to push this too much or else it will end up super harsh. And let's mess with this out slider. It's nice and loud without distorting. we have 2 more plugins that are going to help us get the rest of the way there. Next up, you want to pull up the clip distortion under your distortion category here. It's pretty much the closest thing you can find, in my opinion, to a soft clipper in stock Logic. Go down to app presets, hit warm clip distortion, and you want to drag these blue dots all the way to the right, to the left, so the distortion affects the whole frequency spectrum. And I want to turn the drive down, gain, the high shelving up, the low pass up, so all the frequencies are included. Then we want to adjust the symmetry, drag it down until it hits around 8. When I play it now, it's going to sound way too distorted, but we're going to drag the mix down. Add in some gain on the input and the output and a little bit of drive if necessary. Sounds good. Then we just have one last plugin we're going to bring in to finish out the stock mastering chain. From dynamics, you want to go to adaptive limiter. It's going to look like this. And so we want to drag the gain all the way down, this out ceiling up to 0 dB, and look ahead between 40 and 50 milliseconds. And then we can just bring the gain up till it sounds how we want. Could do a quick A/B before any plugins and then after the mastering chain we just added. So here's with nothing on the master. And here is stock mastering engaged. Now, I'm going to go ahead and show you how I typically master kind of my go-to chain, and I'll show you how that goes. I start with that same linear EQ, and I'll leave it the way I have it, as it still applies to the same beat. What I'm going to do now is also try out the tube EQ, which comes from the EQ section, Vintage EQ. This is a super slept-on EQ from a Pultec, so I like to keep this bottom rack off. On the master, you want to make sure it's in linear mode. What I like to do is just work with the low boost and low attenuation. Attenuation means lowering. Same with the high. Let's pull some boost up and figure out which one sounds good. Let's keep going. Sounds good to me. Last but not least, on this output section, you have a drive knob and an output model. Depending on the beat, I like to choose between the silky or the punchy mode. Try both of them, see which one sounds better. I'm just gonna go back and forth between the tube and the linear and see which sounds better for this beat. Personally, I like the tube EQ better. Next thing I pull up is a multi-presser, the same one that I use in the stock setup. We can pretty much leave it how it is. And then instead of that clip distortion and adaptive limiter, I pull up the paid plugin, the T-Rex Classic Clipper. By far the best clipper that you can get in Logic. It's not too expensive and it's definitely well worth it. Lets you compete with the soft clipper from FL Studio. I like to have the settings at 0 dB output and the slope over around -10 being soft clipping. From here, I'll just play the beat and drag the gain up to between 3 and 4 dB. Sounds good to me. I will show you guys before and after the mastering chain. So here's with nothing on there. And here is with my go-to chain. Thanks for watching. If you haven't seen the first part of this video, I will link that in the card at the end screen. Remember to like, comment, and subscribe to join the squad. Peace.
Xavier.